From a 7-year-old standpoint who grew up here and matured through the experience, they pressed the limits of the material and the technology at the time. And the design, post and beam construction was new. This kind of open air thing was new and different. My name is Wallace Stewart Wirick. I go by Wally. My mom, Barbara Jane Wallace, and Thomas Monroe Wirick produced me and the house we're in. Built in 1958. It was a family project. My dad found a career with Sunset magazine, and both my parents were art majors in school and design. My dad was a commercial designer. My mom fell in love with modernism. She was quite the master of this house. Dad was a designer too, and they ran into Cal Straub, who had formed the Straub and Hensman group, and they were out of the school of USC and off the tree of Frank Lloyd Wright minimalism, and this was it. Purportedly, and I don't really know because I was 7, but Dad exchanged graphic design work for part of the payment on the architectural drawings for this. My brother still has those drawings, so he's got them digitized. So he says they're elegant, and he should know. He's a pretty well-known architect himself. My sister does a lot of art, sewing, and that sort of thing. So does the environment produce your talents? We don't know, but we all kind of followed in suit. Living here was part of, you absorbed what was in design. They bought the property. There was no house next door, no house on either side. Pretty open. They bought it for $2,500 and ended up building the house for about $17,000. The load of bricks for this fireplace was put on the street, and my job was to walk it through the carport, hand it to Dad, and he'd lower it down in a bucket to the mason who built and so there's a picture of me someplace as a buff 7-year-old carrying 3 bricks with no shirt on because Dad didn't have a shirt on. It was a family project. And there was what my mom called the golden age of our family when Dad he had started working with Sunset magazine, and at that time was making very good money for a young man who was 27 years old. And by the time he was 32, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. So our life changed as there was no drugs at that time. So he lost his job and lost everything. And that turned out to be the advantage for this house, because my parents didn't have any money to do anything to alter it, to modify it, or do anything but just keep it upright, keep it clean, keep it painted. And Mom loved it, and Dad finally came to his disease after we had to move him out, and Mom still, just loved the place and loved the memories. And at one particular point in the 90s, I guess, maybe early 2000s, I can't remember, she had saved up enough and went through it and just refreshed it and put in the elevator, because by that time she was getting to be 75, 80, and walking up these stairs was keeping her young, but she wasn't liking it. So it was the life of the house, all the celebrations, Thanksgiving, Christmas, no matter what, whether Dad was ill or whatever. And this was the party house. When you open those big doors and invite the outdoors in, it becomes what Southern California is known for. Just a beautiful place and a beautiful environment with which to live and enjoy. In the summertime, we had hide and seek games that had 50 kids. It was the 50s. It was the baby boom, and there was no air conditioning. So you had flow-through ventilation and louvered windows, and you opened the house and you slept with the fans on, or many times my parents it would get too warm upstairs and they'd sleep out on the deck. Today, we've lost that. I mean, we live in one of the few Mediterranean climates in the world, and yet we buy a lot, we take the old house and we scrape it clean, and we build to the legal limits of the house, and we build this thing and we air condition it, we stay inside, and we don't enjoy the best weather on the planet. And this house will reteach you, if you've forgotten that lesson, that it is a beautiful place to live, and if you can enjoy it while living in a home, why not? When Mom passed, I tried to talk her into giving it back to USC. None of us kids really were hungry, and I didn't feel like, I didn't know how I felt about selling it. But sell it we did. But I'm thrilled that the house is in such great shape. The owners have put their touches on it, and without detracting from its natural design, how it interacts with the environment, and they haven't abused it at all. Which takes a certain kind of character to come in here and realize that they have a little jewel here that you can't build today. It is a responsibility to preserve it as best you can. And with that comes the joy and honorability to invite people in to say, this is a little different house. How do you feel sitting here? Does this feel like a regular home to you? It actually demands that any individual that walks in here evaluates their values on design, which is wonderful, I think. Straub and Hensman found that they couldn't do these kinds of glass constructions anymore because it was the seismic regulations. This is really a study case on, this is where it was done in the mid-50s. This is a period of design. And yes, you can't build this again. If you want to build something like it, take the lessons from this and find the materials. Maybe it's steel now. You can still make it work. You don't have to buy the cookie cutter home. And that may be where you're comfortable, but if you have any aesthetic values at all, test them.